There is an endless list of male pain that I have worked with. And my problem with this awareness of mental health is it comes from a broadcast of people who have never actually helped men. And in some ways, it's almost the worst part of our culture. A culture that sees some awareness in things, thinks that posting about it in social media and creating popular, attractive memes about it solves the problem. It doesn't solve the problem. It creates a new problem. One of the saddest things that you're ever going to see is a man who gives up on himself. But one of the most beautiful things that you could ever witness in your life is a man who's had everything beat him down and come back to rebuild himself. And I get how cliche that this may sound, but this has been the reality of my life for the last 18 years. Witnessing men go through some of the hardest things that you could ever imagine, rebuild their life and become better men. So it's the month of November, and I keep seeing this thing of men's mental health. And this is an interesting topic because for 18 years, I have worked with men at an intimate level on their mental health, on all the issues that are cited as to why men are having issues today. And when you type this in, you get a lot of statistics kind of like this. 75% of suicides are by men. Men are 3 times more likely to kill themselves than women. Men get depressed, men have mental health issues, men self-harm, men get heartbroken, men get abused, men get raped, men feel judged, men get cheated on, men have trauma. Men get divorced, men get screwed over in divorce and custody, men get told to shut up and be quiet during all of this. Now, part of me is so happy in some ways that there is some light being shed on this, but at the same time, I have worked with men in the reality of this for 18 years. This goes into sex, dating, addiction, divorce, custody, suicide, prevention of suicide. It goes into rape. It goes into molestation. It goes into abuse. It goes into going into a psychologist or psychiatrist's office year after year for decades with many men who say they were raped, molested, victims of incest, and being told that that didn't exist. It has to do with men in PTSD. It has to do with violence. It has to do with vets. It has to do with people who really did commit crimes and were ignored by society and culture because they were called toxic. There is an endless list of male pain that I have worked with. And my problem with this awareness of mental health is it comes from a broadcast of people who have never actually helped men. And in some ways, it's almost the worst part of our culture. A culture that sees some awareness in things, thinks that posting about it in social media and creating popular, attractive memes about it solves the problem. It doesn't solve the problem. It creates a new problem. It creates a false solution of PC culture, basically thinking they can share a meme, state a few facts, put your hand on a guy's shoulder who's suffering and just say, "Man, I know your pain." But then when he speaks about the pain, he is blamed, shunned, and criticized for it. Said that he's part of toxic masculinity and given a false solution that doesn't work. It also creates a problem of men who are saying that having billions of dollars, endless money, status, power, and all the sex that you could want achieve happiness, wisdom, integrity, and the missing pieces of your life. And I just want to make this clear to a man that is suffering from mental health. That doesn't create a man feeling better, getting better, or even feeling confident that anybody cares about him. That creates a man that kills himself, a man that is enraged, and a man that seeks vengeance and hatred on society. So yes, it's great that we have awareness, people finally acknowledging that this has happened. But we need to start being a society with all of our problems that we inherited and that we created, that seeks to solve them and not put band-aids over them and feed an ever-growing subculture of narcissistic personalities trying to be popular, saying they have a solution and that they're good people. So let's get into actually what changes men. First things first is men heal differently than women. They also experience pain differently than women. This isn't because men are better than women or women are better than men or anything to do with that. It's that we're different. And what makes us different is what makes us so special and have one of the most beautiful things on earth, the unification of the masculine and feminine. That doesn't have to mean anything's divine or special or grandiose. It's our nature, and it's amazing, and it's everywhere in nature. Now, throughout time, men have had their differences of work, war, creating things, all this sort of stuff. But in our culture, our modern culture, men work hard, are diminished, and stressed in different ways. That's going to create its own problem. Now, those came from problems we inherited. They came from feminism. They came from us having a crazy competitive and progressive economy. And so unique to our culture, unique to our era, men are going to have specific problems of stress, all the stuff we talk about, suicide, depression, lack of worth, lack of sense of self. They're diminished in many ways. We hear the list and list and list. Healing those problems is going to be a completely different process. One of the things that I hate so much about this thing of men's mental health and awareness and all this sort of stuff are these images of men healing in what it's supposed to look like. Now, coming from me, who has actually seen what it looks like and the dangers of it and how hard it is and stressful, it is insulting when you see a room of men crying and screaming and there's other men around, and that's supposed to mean that somehow they beat their PTSD or got through their pain. Now, those things may happen in the process of a man healing, but this is part of the problem, is it looks good to society, but it's not the real story. It sells the PC solution. The reason why this is bad is because it's incomplete, and it gives the idea that a guy who has serious problems can just go and do that and he's going to be fine. He might feel good for that day, that week, and in 2 months or maybe 2 weeks, the problems come back and they're unresolved. Some of the characteristics that happen in really working with men and healing their pain is they got to go through their pain. Men have hatred, they have anger, they have urges towards violence. They're going to have different feelings that come up that our society says is toxic, and a lot of the PC solution that is given for men, when those things get brought up or that direction gets moved in some sort of process, a healing process, therapeutic process, and so on, it is corrected by PC culture saying that that is too much and they need to take a more effeminate approach and so on. Yes, I get it. Men cry, men go through pain, they scream, they have all these things that may not be attractive in our culture, but as soon as we start modeling them based off of what we think looks good or how women think we should heal, man, we are creating a massive, massive, massive tragedy. So how do men go through this process of healing like men? Well, it's different for every man, but every man that I know that deals with certain issues, like if it has to do with violence or PTSD or divorce and custody, there's going to be a lot of anger. Man, you need to be able to go through that anger. You need to be able to go through that anger for years if it is necessary. There's no quick fix to this, and there should be no timeline on what your feelings are of tragedy, incomprehensible violence, pain, loss, betrayal, not being able to see your kids, being falsely accused, and so on. It's going to change you for the rest of your life. Now, my job and what I like to lead men towards is that change having wisdom, virtue, and good things that come to it. This is hard. It takes a long time. And it also fits a solution and an answer that is very unpopular and unattractive to many people out there. Meaning that there can be a wisdom, a virtue, a peace, a greatness, and something that leads and builds that is rooted in anger, sadness, violence, and rage. Now, by all means, I don't think those are good things to hold on to. I don't think those are good things to sustain. But to deny them and think that you can't build a foundation off of them, well, that's just not true, because I've done it with thousands of guys for almost 20 years. Now let's go to the next thing, which is a men's group. A men's group is imperative for male change. And if you have issues around mental health, depression, sadness, PTSD, anger, rage, all these things that we've been talking about here, a men's group is imperative for you to change and guide you. It is so important to have men that keep you accountable, men who you can see who are further down the path than you, men who are right where you're at and can talk to you, and men who are just getting introduced into the group and you can help out. Of course, if you're brand new in the group, wait a couple months and you'll be there. Now, I have had a men's group for 15 years, and I've really dedicated my life to it. It is massive. We have never missed a week of calls. This is huge. It's international. It's 24/7. It's a huge brotherhood, and everybody supports each other. Now, in having that as my standard, I can be quite critical of other groups. If you do not have wisdom and higher thought guiding your group, it will fail. If you do not have unifying goals defining your group, it will fail. And if you do not have men constantly holding themselves to a higher standard, it will fail. So how do we do that, and how do we find that in a group, and so on? First off, I think it's very important. One of the great traits of humanity, but definitely within masculinity, is the pursuit of higher thinking, knowledge, and wisdom, and this should be studied. We have all these groups that are defined by making money, status with men, getting things, and being powerful based on society's goals. And society's goals on getting more is really based on fear. How do I not be weak so I'm going to be as strong as possible and get stuff and posture and do all these things that don't really help? They don't build real confidence, they don't build real stability, and they don't make friendships, relationships, loyalty, or integrity, these awesome values, really grow in a person. See, ever since society has begun, we have had men creating amazing things, philosophies and so on, and they're studied. We hear all about Stoicism, but in my opinion, we actually get a botched version of what it actually is. But there are other philosophies. There's Plato, there's Plotinus, there are spiritual leaders, there are people that led men in many different ways. The interesting thing is we kind of idolize these people in our modern times, but in their time, generally, they were not popular. These things are important to be studied, and I think they should be a foundational part of the group. The other thing that I said is that we need to have unifying goals. In my groups, there are courses that we work. Now, my groups have been around for a long time. These courses span all of the different problems and solutions that men have in our modern cultures. So they could have to do with dating and sex, rebuilding your life, getting into your body, getting into your mind, studying meditation, studying different philosophies, setting goals and 5-year plans, analyzing your entire life, inventorying yourself, diving deep into your shadow, working with therapy. Man, there are a ton of different courses that I have that guys can jump into and start working on their lives. This is fundamental. You have to have something sticking everything together where people can work with each other. A platform for men to grow, see metrics, have a history that they could look back on is really, really important for their change. The last thing that is important with a group is that you have to have men who are always working on improving their lives, thinking of a higher standard, making themselves better. Now, I'm going to tell you this right now. If you have guys in your group for a year, they're going to probably take 3 months off. So there are going to be breaks. A man working on himself very hard is just not sustainable. However, over long periods of time, you will see that person grow. The awesome thing in a group is that if you have a group, not everybody has to be working every day. You're going to see ebbs and flows of different men growing, different guys taking breaks, different guys coming back, all those different things. It's really an amazing process, but there has to be some sort of higher standard that is always being pursued. And this brings me to the last thing, leadership. This is huge in men's development, and we have a serious lack of it. Every single person wants to be a leader because we feel diminished and we don't want to be a follower and all this different stuff. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you want to learn how to lead, you're going to have to follow first. You need to understand that if you're learning a way that is really important, it's going to redefine your life, then it is going to take you a long time to get there. Male leadership shouldn't be something that's a reaction to a thing that you want and you can go and purchase or just do a few things that you could get. Male leadership should be based on hard life decisions that come with hard life experience, meaning there should be experience in many, many different things. What do you do when you lose everything? What do you do when you get betrayed? What do you do when your friend dies? What happens when you almost die? What happens when life delivers you one of the greatest tragedies that you could ever imagine? These are things that are going to happen in your life. And where leadership comes from is not getting these things all perfect, but leadership comes from experiencing them, living through them, taking a tragedy and turning it into goodness, taking ugliness of your life and turning it into beauty, and seeing weakness yet forming it into strength. And sadly, right now, there's a ton of false leaders in our society, in our culture, that so many people look to for an answer. There's so much that I could say about men's mental health and the solution to it all that you just can't put in a video, and I wish I could. I've made just over 1,000 videos at this point, and it's really hard to put the solution in even one of them. The last thing that I'm going to talk about that I think is fundamental is getting into your nature, the nature of masculinity. And this is getting into the nature of your mind, your body, your expression to the world, your identity and sex as a man, as well as your purpose and ambition. These are tough things. And when I say getting into your nature, there are things that come with the nature of humanity. They predate society, they predate your goals, they predate your urges to want to do X, Y, and Z. They're really important and they are in our evolution. The basic idea is this, is feeding your ambition, feeding your purpose, feeding your sex and identity, feeding your expression is just like feeding your body. If you put the right food in it, it defaults to health. This doesn't mean that you're going to be healthy, but it is your baseline of health. You cannot be healthy if you do not have a baseline of what you're putting into your body, resting it properly, and using it properly. If you do those three things, your body defaults to a healthy expression of itself. Your mind works the same way, your expression works the same way, your sex and identity as a man work the same way, and your purpose and ambition work the same way. These are tough when we live in the distortion of modern society because it gets them all cockeyed and gives completely different definitions of what success is in these things. Man, I could go on and on and on. Man's nature is the answer. Now, this can mean many things and you have to find it in yourself. But here's the thing. In my groups for the last 15 years, these are things that we work on together as a group and unify on. We have courses that take you through them, as well as over 30 hours of calls a week where you can jump in on and work with me directly. It also has a long history and lineage of men who have done this. They're on the calls with you. You walk into an immediate brotherhood of men's improvement that really works, that seeks higher thought, that lives wisdom, and doesn't buy into a false answer of society. I don't care if you're dealing with addiction, if you're dealing with divorce and custody. I don't care if you're a vet that has PTSD. My group has worked with guys just like you for over 15 years. It's not the only part of your solution. If you need therapy, you need therapy. If you need to join a gym and start working out or change your diet, you still need to do those things. But it's going to help guide you along that entire process. And so in my final thought of all of this, we as men need to understand that yes, there are issues around mental health, but this blast of media basically telling us that our problems are going to be solved just from awareness, and an awareness that doesn't even listen to us or truly acknowledge what the problem and the potential of that problem is, let alone give us a real solution, man, that is a terrible thing. And so because that is our reality, what do we have to do? Well, guess what? We as men, we got to step it up. We have to find a solution, seek a solution, and build a solution. And if we don't, we are almost guaranteed a life of frustration, constantly seeking a lie, chasing a tail in a world that has a broken society leading it. And this is not the virtue of masculinity. This is not the beauty within you. And this is not the power that you ever have to accept. Stay strong, be strong, and let's build an awesome future for all the generations after us to live in.